Hey everyone, today I'm doing something a little differently. I'm just going to be going over the TTS mod so that anyone who is new to the mod can listen to this video or watch this video and get quickly up to speed how to navigate it quickly and just take their tabletop MCP experience and translate it right into the mod right away so you're up and running and you're posting in looking for a group on the discords or playing games with your friends with very few roadblocks. So let's just get right into it. Here's the TTS mod, or here's the TTS simulator game. You can purchase this on Steam. It's like usually $20 or less, very affordable, and you have to get the Marvel Crisis Protocol mod and install it through the TTS workshop or through the link in the Discord. There is a Marvel TTS Discord, so just join that. There will be a invite in the description of this video, I think. Let's see. We'll see if I remember. And then you can access the Discord, which will have a link to the page to download the mod. The mod is free. You only have to pay for Tabletop Simulator and you're good to go. So I've already got the mod installed on my TTS. So here's how you get in. You either are given a server name and password, and you click join, and you can find the game that you're looking for. Type in the password, and you're good to go. You're jumping in with your buddy who already set it up, or you are creating your own game. You can create multiplayer. You create a room and password, have a number of players, and then whether you have to invite people through friends or invites, etc. So you can just create your own server here. Sure, I'll just go ahead and do that. And here we go. Here's the workshop mod. Here's MCP. It'll probably be right up here, first option. If you just downloaded it, I guess. And let's get right into it. So here's the mod. It takes a second to load up. Quite a few assets that are hidden under the hood and that have to load in first. But you are, as the first player that joins the room, you're always set up default red player. If you join the room and you're not the one who created it, you get the bubbles that pop up like this. You can't play the game properly if you don't sit in the red or blue seats. So if your opponent has loaded the game and is in the red seat, you're choosing blue. And if they've switched to the blue seat, you have to choose red. If you want to watch the game and you don't want to have your cursor be seen by the red or blue player, you'd have to choose the gray spectator. So if you want your cursor to be seen by the other players, you would choose another color here. But anyway, let's just get right into it as the red player. So the first thing is that sometimes this mod or like TTS itself is janky or doesn't load assets properly. At any point in time, you can reload this mod back to this state that it's currently in, and that's just going up here to the game section and clicking on it again, as if you just booted up TTS. And it'll just do everything. It'll reset everything, load everything back up, and this is the same way you can access any saved games and things like that. Now, a word of caution about saved game states is that the assets may not fully load entirely, or different aspects of the game may not load perfectly. So there's always a little bit of risk involved if you try to save a game and play it later, or if the game crashes, things like that. So okay, so then now let's talk about the movement of the camera here. I'm holding uh, my right button on my mouse, and that changes the angle. As long as you're holding the right button, you can make the angle adjustments you want. You default load the camera in on the third person setting, which allows you to use your WASD keys and it lets you move around the table as much as you want. So if you watch other people play this game on TTS, they're gonna go crazy with it most of the time. Very fidgety, but that's just what we all do, I guess. So it allows you to move it pretty quickly. You can move all different angles. You can get different angles on the models that you want to see. If you want to see line of sight things, you can really get right down to the board, and it's very cool. It's very cool. You can get all the different angles. So one thing to note is if you ever get janked up in the camera and you're like, "What the heck is going on?" You can just click near the outer sides of the table, and it'll change. It'll allow you to change your camera mode. So you can also change to top down, which I know some players do prefer. There is no way to change to angle it. You're looking at it straight down. So I like the freedom of being able to rotate around. It's like it's closer to real life, I guess. And I'm used to. I guess there's like I'm a mix of a mix. I'm used to a mix of playing online, playing in person. So I like them to be closer in how I would experience them. Anyway, that's just me. So now we have the different ways you can use your mouse here on the left hand side. Typically, you'll almost always just stay in the default pointer, finger pointer thing, and that lets you pick up different things and drop them, like the models and the tools and things like that. Sometimes you'll hit one of your F keys on your keyboard, and that will change the thing that you're doing. So you have to be careful about that. A lot of I've seen on games and things like that, people accidentally get stuck on the ruler here, which is the F4 shortcut, and they're trying to click and pick up something, and it just keeps hitting the pointer, or like this a little spamming pointer, and or it's also the ruler. And so if you want to fix that, you can either go here onto this side, or you can see the little F shortcuts for them. So you can just press F1, boom, back to there you go. You can use the line a lot. Sometimes people use the line to check line of sight if it's pretty tight. You can also use the camera views, but of course, like this is not a legal tool in Marvel, so you only really would do this if you and your opponent agreed it was okay to do, in order to determine if something is in line of sight, or that's like the main example, but there could be other things too. Anyway, so now let's see. Now you're ready to get your opponent in here. So let's say they jump in the room. Like I said, they would join in on the blue side if you already had the room set up. And sometimes the other player experiences glitchiness or visual bugs. And so, or maybe the dice tray doesn't work exactly perfectly. There's things like that, little things that you may notice. And you can always I personally like to reload the mod when both players are in the lobby at the same time, and that almost always solves any sort of visual bugs or things of that nature. So now that you and your opponent are here, you would then drop a list into the roster building part here. A lot of players, the majority of players, just will copy an MCT code from a list builder, which is Jarvis, Protocol, Cerebro, or wherever else you'd find them. You could maybe even grab them from Longshanks if you want to copy, just like NetDeck or whatever you want to do, your buddy's list. You paste the code right in here, and then you would just create the roster, and it would create the roster, and it would set you up. Now, I don't have that. I'm like super old school, like analog basically situation. I've saved objects in my TTS mod, and then I just like drop them. I pick them up from here and I drop them in. So I'm a little too old for the new hip way to build rosters in other platforms. Anyway, the point is that you get your roster created, you put it in the roster, like this like roster device thing. I don't know what to call it. You open your roster, and boom, it all shows up. You should have all your cards. Everything should show up here. If it doesn't, then there's obviously something going on. But I would, I guess, try again. I don't know. All right. Either way, it doesn't happen very often. Okay, so one other thing you could do though is if you need to make a couple of quick swaps, you can hit edit roster, You can remove a character, save the roster, and then go into these character lists here and find the character that you want to switch, you want to swap in. So yeah, one thing to note is that every time you open up one of these things, it has to load the cards. Sometimes that takes a very long time. If you've got something like 321 tactic cards in the deck, it has to load the image for each one. And although the files may be reasonable sized, there's still a lot of them, and it takes a second, and the game gets a little slow for both players. So basically, I would say that if you're ever building or making changes to a roster, you would ideally want to do that while you're not connected with another player to make that go quicker. Anyway, so now you've decided what you want to play. You open your roster, and your opponent opens their roster, and then you can roll priority and all that. The dice tray is over here, depending on what color you're on, right or left side. You can roll your dice. If you ever have any sort of glitches, I would always try to refresh the dice tray. And I don't know exactly what it does, but sometimes that works if I have any issues. A cool thing you can do here is if you want to change your dice, you can use your number key while your mouse is over the dice tray, and it can refresh how many dice you're about to roll up to 9. So if you need to roll more than 9, you just hit 9, add a few more dice, and then you're good to go. So yeah, and then of course you can roll your dice. Something interesting, so here's a few things. Obviously, when you add your crits, it adds it throws in dice, but as you remove dice, it will take it'll take any dice you haven't rolled yet, and then it'll start taking dice off the left here. I don't if that ever comes up or matters, but it definitely becomes a thing. All dice results end up showing up in this left-hand side chat box, which is very handy for looking at past rolls to determine if anything was missed. So that's that's pretty cool. It's real life doesn't have that, which is pretty sweet. You know, in chess, when you the players make their move and then they write down what they did. It's like that, but for Marvel. It's pretty sweet. So of course, if you want to re-roll any dice, you can pick them up, and it'll of course call that out. However, you could also click the numbers. If you click the number here, it will push that result down, and then you never have to worry about counting up the dice in the tray because of the counter can do that. So when I roll my dice, I never look at the actual physical dice. I always look at the counters. It's just faster, and yeah, and it just I think it's it's just visually easier to see it with your eye, just capture with a quick glance and understand what's about to happen and all that. Anyway, so that's the dice tray. Sometimes the dice will get stuck either up here or down here, and you can always you can always delete them, and that will get rid of them. Sometimes there's even another glitch where they stay there and they're exist in the box, but you can't interact with them at all, in which case you just kind of have to deal with that. And it's a minor issue, but ultimately it doesn't really matter because they won't ever push to the top where they get scored. They just are obstacles in your dice tray that don't do anything other than are obstacles at that point. So sometimes that glitch happens. Anyway, now you've rolled your dice, you got priority. You can then reload. You can load a map in. So the maps are generated here with the random map button. It's funny that this map pulled up. It's literally my least favorite one. So here we go. All right. Oh, look at that. It's yeah. All right, cool. Sick map here. I met Get a Key at WTC, so it's really cool that his map showed up. All right, cool. And so anyway, these maps are randomly pulled from what's in the box here, but it's only ever pulled from the strict maps. And these strict maps are maps that are used in the TTS league. They've been basically gone through balance adjustments, and they fall in a pretty standard competitive play in terms of the amount of terrain and the type of terrain and all of that. Of course, there's a bunch of different themes. And yeah, so lots of different players have built maps. It's really cool that we've got so many different ones. And yeah, anyway, so let's we got a map here. We can deploy the map by hitting this button, set up terrain on map. And you can then of course you can then pick your cards. So the way same like in MCP on like in real life, you if you're given you win priority, let's say you choose secures. What this does is it lets you randomly draw one. So I would draw my secures, my opponent their extracts. In this case, I'll just randomly put one in here. And there we go. So once you got both your cards selected here, the cool thing about this is that it tells you who chose. The chat log tells you which player chose which type of crisis card. So it looks like it says here in the chat that I selected red, selected their secure, and now we can deploy them. So let's get them going here. This is pretty sweet. Look at that. We're playing Demons Downtown. There's an incinerate condition put out because the crisis itself puts out incinerates if you're on them in the power phase. So some handy dandy little incinerates right there. If you have a condition that you want to give out and for some reason it's not available on your cards, either because of how the character is set up or any sort of limitations in that spot, or maybe it got glitched out or it got just deleted in a glitch or something like that. It can happen sometimes. You can spawn all the tokens through this tray here, and they'll all pop up. What's this? I don't usually do this because we're pretty good at. So yeah, there's a bunch of tokens in here, and you can use those if needed. But typically they are not because each character usually in tactic card usually gets everything they need attached to their little kit. Yeah, so then you have drawn. Let's see here now. Let's build our list here. So we're just gonna put a team together, and we would pick our cards. And there we go. So you pick it tells you what threat. Very important. So actually, when you're building your team, when you've obviously picked the threat level when you're going for the build. And as you pick your team, it tells you your threat, basically giving you no excuse to accidentally build a team over threat as long as you double check. And yeah, there are these like helpful little things here, but I actually never use them, so I can't speak to those. But anyway, once you hit auto activate, every character you've selected and tactic card will be pushed into the middle here. Nothing will happen if you don't pick at least one character. So you need to pick at least one character for any tactic cards to push over. And you can see that like we've got a related token here. This one in this case has the slow. Looks like it doesn't have the root with it, but that's maybe where you'd have to pull up the token tray. Anyway, so yeah, so the characters are all here. You're ready to start deploying. If you make a mistake and you want to fix something, swap in a character, swap out a character, you can always delete. The character in the tray. And let's say I need to add in Kingpin instead. You could just like hit Kingpin by himself and hit auto activate, or if you wanted to just grab a character that's not on your list, you could always just add a new tray here. Search the character pile for the card you want to add. Drop it over top of the panel. Hit the button. Boom. Character set in. Good to go. Easy peasy. And yeah, so that's basically the setup of building a roster. Once you want to start deploying, you have to hit this button right here. The ruler here that I'm using, the ruler / pointer, you can, if you press tab, it will create this little arrow, a call out, and then if you hold tab, it'll create the line. So this is like a shortcut to using the ruler function, which is probably the second most function when we play the game. Usually people like to use the tabs to like indicate what they're doing or point out like something to their opponent or maybe to someone watching the game or like a streamer, things like that. Anyway, so yes, let's turn on the deployment here, right here. There we go. Now all the characters are locked to the range 3. They can't go any further. and you also can't like move them or place them. Like I can't use the place function on the tool until I've turned off the deployment the deploy lines feature. So let's just get all these characters on the board here, and now let's turn off the deployment. So the movement tools and range tools are obviously used throughout the course of the game. They're all number pad coded to shortcuts. So if you've got a number pad on your computer, let's see here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the number pad is pretty straightforward. 1 is the range 2 tool on its side, which is 1 inch. Perfect, what we need. 2, range 2 is 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. And then you have the small, medium, short, medium, and long tools are 7, 8, and 9. And when you do pushes and throws, you're pressing the 6 key. And this, if you want to push, if I want to push Thanos away from me, I would just bring it towards me. And if I want to push him towards me, I would then click the tool, and you're bringing it towards the target that's like doing the push or the pull, right? So in this case, if Skull was doing the push towards him, you'd click and drag it like that. Click and drag, pretty straightforward. And in this case, that's towards. So if you want to do away, you have it toggled to away. Then you do the same thing, push and drag. There's your things. If everything worked out properly, the tool that you're using to push is locked within the 90-degree angle. So you can get as far close to the angle as possible without breaking the rule of the push or the pull, the push or the throw or whatever you're doing. All right. So what else is there to say about that? Those are the tools. You can. Okay, there is one thing that's important is that because there's a little bit of a visual glitch or some sort of glitch, I don't want to call it. This is pixelated, right? The whole mod is played on pixels. So if you in certain angles on certain setups, I don't know if I can find this because this is like random, but basically some spots, because this is pixelated, it won't the overlay or the model's health and the symbol that I'm showing here. This symbol indicates that Thanos is on this crisis. This works for the secures only, with the exception of researcher, and so sometimes what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say that sometimes that won't show up. And the easiest way to fix this is just to take the model, move them literally 1 millimeter or less towards, like 1 pixel more, closer towards the secure, to make sure they get the overlaid symbol. I personally make sure that happens because I don't want to accidentally run into a miscommunication with my opponent and say, oh, I used the range 1 tool to measure, and the opponent say, I didn't see that. All I see is him not being on the point. And it's like, uh-oh, like, what do you do kind of thing. So, yeah. Rather than avoiding sort of some sort of weird a miscommunication, you just want to make sure that each model that you put on a point is has the overlay on them for the secures at least. For the secures. Okay. So now let's see here. Once you've deployed your models, or maybe but right before you've deployed your models, just like before the game really starts to begin, I put on the stream review. The like whatever, I don't know what to call this. This is just a stream review, and what this does is it puts all of the overlays of the characters in a nice, very easily usable, I don't know, feature. It's an easily usable function. What am I trying to say? But either way, all of the key important information about the characters that are on the table is displayed on this overlay, so you don't have to scroll as much and go like check your actual list and then go back to the board and go back and forth to the lists like you do in real life. You can keep your camera pretty steady on the board state and look at everything here. It also includes the tactic cards. And obviously the player, it includes their score, includes the most recent dice result. That is, whatever dice are still showing up in the tracker, it'll show that. It shows the health and damage of each character. It'll show conditions as well as other special tracking tokens. So it's all pretty handy. And then there's also, you can also move each of these features too. I don't know how to do that perfectly here. I don't do that very often. There we go. So you could move these around if they were in the wrong spot. They're in different chunks too. So if you don't like certain things in certain spots, you can move them. Anytime I'm streaming a game that has a clock on it, or if I'm playing a game with a clock, I like to just move this to the top here. Because I want to see like as much of the game as possible, especially if I'm like streaming it. I got my little personal camera already covering up the corner of the map. I'm trying to like get more space. Anyway, let's see, what else do I got here. You can also turn off different features of the stream view too. The only one I usually have ever turned off would be the actual clocks if they're not needed. And then of course, like there's other features too, like you can see the top down little circles that are floating on them to see who is who. And yeah, okay, so now the tokens are on the board here. Let's say you've got a glitch with a token, or maybe like you throw this, let's see here. Let's say the car gets thrown. You can delete the car, or you can unlock the car and throw it. Now, if you have your pointer and it's one finger, it means that whatever you're pointing at or touching is locked. If you press L on that thing, it will unlock it and it opens up all your fingers to grab it. So you can grab it, you can move them things, unlock things, put them down, etc. One thing you don't want to do is unlock the mat, which is, if you do that, the mat will literally start floating in the sky. It will mess up your game to some degree, and ultimately, I just try to avoid that. You can usually avoid it by right-clicking on the thing you want to unlock, and it'll highlight yellow so you know you're not going to like... I'm not entirely sure here. I don't use these very often. All right, so anyway. So if you, for example here, let's say you like throw the car here and you move it. Oh, look at this. The token is floating there. You can, this is a secure, so the secures are always locked, or they should be. So you can hit the unlock button, it'll drop it, or maybe it might not. It might still be there. It might still like float in space. But if it does, you can tap it, and it'll float to the bottom, and you can relock it. And then the token is now just dropped directly onto the ground where it would have been, or where like right where it would have been just a few, an inch below where it was in this case. So if you ever have issues with the tokens, maybe you put them on, like one of them gets deleted or something like that, it's pretty easy. You just like reload, you just delete the tokens here, you reload them, and you put them back to where they were. Of course, that's a little more tricky when the tokens were on the ground, because obviously you have to guess as to where exactly they were, but between you and your opponent, you can figure those ones out. Of course, like most extracts are usually in possession of a character, like characters are usually holding them. That's how you win the game in a lot of cases. And the secures usually don't move. So it's only a few select ones where that would be an issue of having to like guess where it went, guess where it should have gone after you redeploy the tokens. Okay. Yeah, I think I've gone through everything that I can think of. If you want to change your tools, you can change them here. And there's a bunch of few options that are in the system, as well as you can import your own. I haven't done that before, but it's a matter of just like finding the artwork. I'm sure there's other people can help out with that. All right, yeah. So that's pretty much the rundown of the mod. I think I'm going to keep remembering different things here and there as the video is going to go 20 minutes longer. Okay. These tokens here. So you can use your Steam, you can use your little Steam picture with a custom token. And if you don't want to do that, you can use a flag, which are already in the system. And the red flag, the orange flag, sorry. Wow, blue flag on yellow VP. Blue flag on yellow. This one is the red side. The blue token with the yellow flag is for the blue side. So if you're playing the game, you want to make sure you check that. You want to make sure you got the right one set up. Anyway, all right, is there anything else that I can't think of here? I think that pretty much everything else is like you can figure out. Um, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We're gonna call it. All right. Hopefully this was helpful to any newer players to the mod, and I'll catch you in the next video, guys. See you later.